There we go.
Yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
Let me know when to start, yeah?
I'm going to introduce you and you can start right after
Yeah.
that.
Okay, sure.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sarah. I'm the moderator for this session on behalf of the organizing community of the 10th ELT International Symposium. I welcome all the participants and the presenter, Mr. Tafuti. For this current session, the English Language Center is greatly thankful to the management of Utah Shanock and Sohar International Bank for sponsoring this event. Mr. Tafuti is an ELT expert and an author. He holds an MA in English language teaching from CVU London and took a doctorate education course with the University of Exeter. He's going to talk about injecting critical creative thinking in language teaching. He is going to introduce practical and useful tips, technique, and activity. Mr. Tafuti promises that the session will be informative and fun. I hope to.
Well, hopefully.
Thank you for being with us. We're very happy to have you. The floor is all yours. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Farah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Let me first send a big thank you to the wonderful people at the ELC in the University of Technology and Applied Sciences in Shiraz. It's really a great pleasure for me to be here amongst you to share, as Farah mentioned, some of the techniques, some of the activities, some of the ideas I use to infuse critical and creative thinking in teaching. Let me start by asking, are there left-handed people amongst us today? Is it true that a left-hander is smarter than a right-hander, like me, and like most of us? Actually, almost 90% of people are right-handed. Let's look at this picture here. Here is a left-hander stirring coffee. The question is, why does a left-handed stir coffee counterclockwise, like this? Why? Imagine the presenter today, me, is a robot, yeah? And you know what artificial intelligence is doing these days, and there's a lot of talk about it. It's really booming. And I think some of the colleagues in today's symposium talked about it. Or rather, imagine the presenter as a huge animal, an elephant, like this guy here. The question is, why is the elephant looking through the window? Or imagine a baby elephant falling into a pond full of water. How would he come out? What if a child asks her parents, Mom, Dad, where do we come from? What could be the answer? In a typical family like this, who do you think is more of a critical thinker, the mom or the dad? And who is more of a creative thinker? Is this really a creative dad? What do you think? Really? Yeah? Now let's look at these two products. Which of the two is a creative product? Why is it that this one is a creative product? This. Why? What about this equation here? How could it be correct? And this one here. Can you see the pattern? Can you figure out the missing percentage? Oh, and here's a beautiful story that we all know. The race between the turtle and the rabbit. And we all know the winner in the first round. Yes, I say the first round because there is a second round and there is a third round. Is there a fourth? Yes. And there's a fourth round as well. Oh, well, that's it for today, gentlemen. Thank you. Any questions? No worries. I think the wonderful guys in Shiraz, they gave us enough time to talk all about all of this and more. So I'll be answering my questions, the questions I just asked you, and give you more. Actually, these are some of the things I use in my teaching. I'll share them with you and more, and I hope you find them useful. The things that I've just mentioned you is just to like a little grabber into my topic, okay, which is about critical thinking and creative thinking. Now, let's start with critical thinking. And what do you mean by critical thinking? Actually, everybody has his own way of looking at it. We all think in a different way, and I have my own way of looking at critical thinking. Critical thinking for me is looking at the thing from a different angle, from the other angle, or perhaps angles. Yeah, and usually this angle is the easier one, the simpler one, right? That helps you actually solve a problem or see the issue better, right? Be more enlightened. So that's how one of the ways I see critical thinking. I'll talk also about critical thinking being positive thinking later. But for the concern of our talk today, we'll talk about activities. What do we do in class with our students that encourage them to think critically? And as you've seen, I use some of the riddles, right? Some of the brain teasers that I've just used, yeah, to inject. All right, so one of the riddles I use, the one that I just showed you, is the one about the left-hander stirring coffee. And we ask the question, why does a left-handed stir coffee counterclockwise? And one way of teaching my students to look at the thing from a different angle is to look at the word why here. And most people would think that, we're looking for a reason why this guy is stirring coffee. But actually, if we forget about that and we focus on the other meaning of the word why, which is the purpose, we find that the easier answer is to say that he stirs coffee counterclockwise just to make the sugars, dissolve in the coffee. So that's one way of doing it. The second one, again with a why is the elephant looking through the window? Here is the other way around. We're not looking for the purpose, why he's looking. Rather, we're looking for a reason. Why is the elephant looking through the window? Because he cannot look through the wall. Yeah, because the window is transparent. You can see through. All right, that's why he's looking through the window.
Moti, can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Perfect.
Yeah, great. Now I can hear you. Great, wonderful. Sorry for the The other, I'll go faster because of the time. The other riddle is another elephant. How would this elephant come out of the pond? Most people would go and think about the how in terms of way and manner, and that's more difficult to look at it. But then if you look at it from the other angle, which is actually, it's not, because the word how also, like why, has two meanings. It has the manner and the way, and it also has the other meaning, which is the state or the situation of the elephant. So how will he come out, or how did he come out? He came out very simply wet. That's the simple and the easier answer. Now, looking at this this pattern here, trying to find the missing percentage. Again, here it depends where you're looking at the problem from which direction you're looking at it. So if you change direction, for example, look at it this way, you will easily find the missing percentage, right? So there's another brain teaser, if you like, but again, for this one here, how can this be correct? Very simply, if you take the 2 and you make it like superscript, it makes sense, you know, and you have the correct equation here. Another way of looking at critical thinking is, as I said, looking at it from different angle. And we use this actually in research. Yeah. In research, what you're doing, you're looking for the truth, for the reality. You want to look at the issue, you know, in a correct way. And one way of doing that is using what we call triangulation. This is actually a research term, you know, that researchers use. And triangulation means looking at the thing from multiple angles, at least 3. That's why you have the prefix tri. So here on the left, in this one here, you can look at the problem by looking at the different, or by using different methods of data collection. You can use the observations, you can use questionnaire, you can use, you know, document review, and so on. So the more data collection methods you have, the more critical thinker you are, and the more likely you will get to the correct solution to the problem. The other thing is also looking at the participants. Yeah. If, for example, you have parents involved in the research, you have teachers and you have students, it means you're looking at it from different angles, and that helps with critical thinking as well. So we do this because in our course, we get into research, and one way of getting students to think critically is to look at the issue from different angles and use different methods of data collection, using or looking at it, you know, from the points of view of different participants. Okay. Another way of looking at it, for me, critical thinking, as I said, is positive thinking. Always try to look at the positive side of things, and we need that in our life. You know, for example, as a teacher, when you give feedback, try to give positive feedback first to your students. How many of us actually, when you read students writing, you look for the positive side? Like, for example, you like a good idea, or there is a nice analogy that you point in green, not in red, because in red we always look for the imperfections and the mistakes, and also the words we use. Instead of saying to students this is a mistake, rather say it's an imperfection. Okay, so that's you're more positive. As Muslims, we also follow the example of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he always encourages us to think positively. And one instance is when he asked his family to donate sheep. They did that, and then he went and asked them what happened to the sheep. His wife answered, she said, it's all gone except the shoulder piece. And look how the Prophet Muhammad looks at it. He looked at it from a different angle, a more positive angle. He said, rather, all remains except the shoulder piece, which means it's what you donate, it's what you help people with that stays with you. Another way of thinking positively, and also looking at the example of Prophet Muhammad is something to do with superstition, right? And there is a hadith where he says, stay away from superstition, and we like the glad tidings, all the positive news, yes, we get, but not superstition, because superstition actually, and in Arabic we call it tatayyur, yeah, actually discourages you from doing what you're supposed to do. Another thing is to keep your heart clean from all the poison that we get from people here and there. Because if you come and tell me something bad about my colleague or about my friend, then I can hold that grudge or that bad feeling towards. So Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is the hadith, he said, لا يبلغني أحد من أصحابي عن أحد شيئا فإني أحب أن أخرج إليكم وأنا سليم الصدر. It means I want to meet my friends and my companions and everybody with a good heart. So there are many incidents and there are many actions and sayings from our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Now, critical thinking for me is looking at it from a different angle, trying to be positive, and you can use riddles, you can use brain teasers, you can use, like for example, in students writing, what we do, we say that you can be a critical thinker if you're a good communicator. We get the ideas clearly, from you. You use good examples, you use good arguments, you support your ideas with evidence, with statistics, and that shows your critical thinking. Critical thinking, it means you don't rush into decisions. Yeah, you're patient. You give yourself time to think about the issue or the problem before you jump into decisions or judgments or even actions. Right. That's critical thinking, a little bit about critical thinking and what we do to inject some of it. Now with creative thinking, we see it as trying to find a new relationship between two things that are usually unrelated. Yeah, many of us talk about creative thinking as, thinking outside the box. Yeah, that's a term that we use. But for me, creative thinking is more of seeing that new relationship between two things that are usually unrelated. And this relationship or this new thing that you bring must be useful. It must have value. Yeah, that will add something beneficial to you or to the people around you or to the general public. So that's the third principle in creative thinking. Actually, if there's one training course I attended which is called the TRIZ, and in Arabic they say that there must be three letters, al-jimat al-thalath. It must be new, jadid. It must be valuable, okay, ذو جدوى. And also a third, which is it must be good and acceptable and ethical, especially, right? So a creative product that is harmful to others may not be called creative because it's harmful to anybody, any human being. If your product is harming anybody, it's not within the yeah. And if you remember the two pictures I used at the beginning, these ones here. Yeah, why is this creative and why this is not? Actually, this one was created by somebody to go and steal, the cattle or the cows, and he using the cow's shoes or whatever just to hide the steps and stuff. So it wasn't used for a good purpose. So that's not very creative. How can we, or where do we see creativity in our teaching? In our course, for example, we tell our students, you can be creative in your speech when you start with a grammar. Be creative there. Okay, that's creativity. The second thing is, if you can use some form of analogy, you create, because analogy, what is it? It's connecting two things, like it could be an abstract idea with something concrete, something tangible. If you can create an analogy between the two, that analogy is a creative thing. So we want to see that in your writing, in your speaking, and that shows your creativity. Okay? Like, for example, the analogy I created myself, I created two analogies to distinguish between simple thinking, critical thinking, and creative thinking. For example, the water analogy, as you can see here. The first picture is a picture of a pond, which represents simple thinking because it's contained in one place. It's not deep. There's no movement and so on. So that's, for me, an analogy for basic and simple thinking. The second picture in the middle is when the water turns into a river, it's deeper, there is movement, there is, action, that becomes critical thinking. A third level, when actually the water actually gets into new spaces and creates other waters, other small rivers or lakes or whatever, then that's creative thinking. So you become a creative thinker by actually getting out of the usual or the convention or the usual path and creating other waters. So that's one analogy I use to distinguish between the three levels of thinking: simple, critical, and creative. Another one, which is the family analogy, this one here. As you can see, we have the father, the mother, and the children. Now, for me, the baby, actually, not a child could have developed some level of thinking, but the baby represents the basic thinking, because all what the baby is concerned with is being fed, feeling safe, and so on. And also, even the language the babies use is just crying and or whatever, or giggling or whatever. So that's very basic. Yeah. Now, for me, if you look, the mother is more of a critical thinker, because she's more cautious, she's more careful about things, she asks a lot of questions, yeah, and so on. Of course, this is just for the sake of discussion. Please, no offense to mothers or to ladies. I think that the father is more of a creative thinker, because there are certain elements and principles that are present in the father, which is, as you can see in the picture, he's more playful, right? And also, very important, more daring. He has the courage to play with the baby in a dangerous way, which perhaps the mother wouldn't do. Also, if we talk about going outside the box, we can see that fathers actually, in our culture at least, they travel more, they venture more, they explore more spaces. That's just for the sake of comparing, we can say that the baby represents basic thinking, the mother critical thinking, and the father creative thinking. And you can see here the father being more playful, takes risk, he has the daring, because actually creative thinking is, you have to have a daring even at the level of thinking. You have to take your thinking, your brain, into unusual and sometimes crazy spaces or places where maybe many people wouldn't want to do that. Another way of looking, at the difference between critical and creative thinking is being convergent and divergent. As you can see with the river, when the river diverges into new spaces, that's divergent thinking, and that's critical thinking. Convergent is actually reaching, actually going towards a one point where we make the correct decision or judgment about things after analyzing so many things, right? So that's also a difference between convergent and divergent thinking. There are certain creative ideas and critical ideas that we share with students. And one of them, which I really love, something to do with sports, maybe you're familiar with that, which is the Fosbury flop. And actually, Dick Fosbury, the guy who created this trend in sports, actually in the high jump, I think he died 3 days ago, very recently. And this is and this actually gives us an opportunity to discuss with students what you need to be a creative person like this guy. This guy was an engineer and he was into sports at the same time. So if you have a wide knowledge base and you're versed in different experiences, you'll be able actually to find or to link two things that are usually unrelated and bring them together, and you become creative. So Dick Fosbury, because he uses engineering and know-how and knowledge to find a new way of jumping. So everybody used to jump facing the bar, but he came and he looked at it. He did his analysis and study and his thinking and creativity, and he said, no, I'm going to do it in a different way, in a new way. So he would face the bar with his back. And even the running towards the bar, he would run in a curved way, not in a straight way like everybody used to do. And what is so important about this creative trend actually is that everybody now, all high jumpers, are following this. Yeah. Other ways of being creative that we can encourage our students to do is to try to come up with some acronyms. That helps a lot in their studies, in their analyzing things. And I think this is to do more with critical thinking. Also, if you can get your students or teachers to come up with some tongue twisters, because I think I created a tongue twister related to the sheriff shoes. If you're willing, I could share that with you. And let's go to the story that I started at the beginning, the race between the turtle and the rabbit. This story actually shows a wonderful creative work. But somebody comes to a story that we all know. There's only one race between the rabbit and the turtle won because the rabbit was overconfident and he slept and all of that. We know the story. But a creative guy comes and he changed the story. He added other rounds or other races. Okay, and in each round there is a purpose behind it. Actually, in the second round, the rabbit won. There's a video about it because this time he learned his lesson and he didn't stop. So he ran from start to end. And then the turtle made some thinking, and then she came up with a new idea or a bright idea. And the way she won the race is by changing the path of the race and having a river, as part of the race. So when they got to the river, first of all, the rabbit arrived first, and he stopped because he couldn't swim. But the turtle, was a good swimmer, so the turtle swam and won the third race. Now the fourth one, this is also amazing. The fourth one is rather, instead of thinking in terms of competing with the other, what about collaborating? What about working together? So the rabbit and the turtle, decided that they would race, while helping one another. So when the rabbit would hold the turtle on his back, and when they're swimming, the other way around. And also this gives us an excellent idea about critical thinking. Critical thinking is sometimes looking at it from the other angle, right? Instead of competing, why not collaborating? Yeah. Actually, one of the things I teach my students is always to look at it from the opposite, the reverse way, and see if maybe that works better. All right, the last thing I want to end with, the last thing I want you to remember from all of this is that as teachers and as human beings in general, we need to capitalize on the positive side of things. Yeah, let's not look always at things, perhaps sometimes the way they are, but look at them from a positive point of view, how you deal with students, how you evaluate their work, and so on. Yeah. The other takeaway is that critical and creative thinking are complementary. You cannot separate one from the other. You need critical thinking because you need to analyze. You need to have patience before you make judgments and so on. And that also helps with creative thinking. So the last thing I want us to remember is that we cannot teach critical thinking or creative thinking if we don't have them ourselves as teachers, right? Actually, students, they learn more from our actions, from our breath sometimes, rather than from what you tell them. If you tell, okay, I want you to be a critical thinker, you do this. Well, teacher, show me that you are also a critical thinker. Show me that you are also a creative thinker. What have you contributed? What have you done, right? So we need to, as teachers, we have to contribute a lot in this field. Be creative and show that to our students so that they believe in what we say. And the other thing is, critical and creative thinking is not something you teach in 1 or 2 lessons. It's all through the curriculum. You should start it as early as possible and then continue with that throughout. And the good thing is, if you can have some of it in each lesson or in each chapter and whatever. But we have to have, as teachers, we have to do it deliberately, that we have to have critical and creative thinking in our teaching. I'd like to end with this. I think this is the time I had. So, you know, and if there are any questions, I'm ready to answer any of your questions, please. Okay, while waiting for Farah to be heard, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, I'm I'm here to try to answer you if you have any. Anybody has a question, please? Or you can share any little experience you've done yourself, you know, in your teaching with your students. Any comment, any question, feel free, please. Okay, while waiting for to be able to hear Farah, let me add something to what I mentioned. Actually, one of the activities we use with our students to teach, to help them distinguish between critical and creative thinking, actually, we have a number of questions, and we ask them to classify them. Will these questions help you with critical thinking or creative thinking? Let me give you an example. When we ask, for example, why, question why, this is more of a critical thinking because you're looking for the reasons and so on. But if we say why not, then this why not has the element of going into something unusual. Why not go this way? Why not do this? Why not do that? So the why and the why not, why is more of a critical thinking question. Why not is more of a creative. For example, what for? That's also critical. Yeah. But the question is, what about is more of creative because you want a new thing. What about this new thing? So whenever there is this concept of newness, then you're more thinking in terms of creative thinking, right? Farah, do you hear me? Yeah. Your mic, and you just yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you, mashallah. Great, yeah.
Okay. All
there
right.
we go.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry about this.
That's all right.
It's too many technical difficulties.
Well, there
today.
you go. Happens.
I just want to ask you, but sometimes I think maybe the environment encourages certain people to grow up having critical thinking, like being born in a different place. Sometimes open that opportunity. I think the way you were raised sometimes make you more of a critical thinker. It's not necessarily something you can teach. And I think even when you try to teach it, maybe it's difficult or looks very foreign. And it gets some resistance. So what's your thoughts about that?
Is this a question or a comment?
No, it's actually, well, it's a question, but do you agree or you think maybe
Well,
no?
of course. Well, environment plays a big role in how we think. Yeah.
Yes.
And in our teaching, for example, if you look at it, in some forms of teaching or ways of teaching, especially, actually, there are three types or three forms of teaching. There's what we call the sage on the stage. I'm the teacher, I know everything, and you have to listen to me and follow exactly what I do. That's one form, which is actually widespread in certain environments. The teacher is everything. There's the second form of teaching, which is a guide on the side. It's called the guide on the side. The teacher gives a little freedom to the students, and he's guiding them, right? The third form, which I like more, is when the teacher is a meddler in the middle. You are one of them, right? And you are with them, you are there, you can learn from them, and this gives them more confidence to think, to give their opinions and so on. So these three forms, depends where you are. In some places, there is more of a sage on the stage. In some places, there is more of a guide on the side. And in other places, what I'm trying to do is to be a meddler in the middle. For example, when I get my students to do research, I tell them, if I don't learn from you, it means I have wasted a great opportunity. You know, I'm a learner just like anybody, you know. And also, you want to put the students in the things that they are more interested in and they are more experienced in, so that we change. Actually, this is critical thinking, changing the order instead of the teacher standing and lecturing and telling everybody what he knows. It's the other way around. Now the teacher is sitting there, and the student now is in control and sharing with everybody his experiences, his knowledge, and all the findings he found from his research. So we need to swap that. So yes, environment plays a big role. You're talking about parents, you're talking about and so on. Yeah, but our job as teachers and as educators is to give our kids the opportunity to think critically, to question things, and also to help them, especially deal with all the social media that they have, all the information that you cannot control it unless they develop their critical thinking. They know when to believe this, when not, when to question this, when not. And also something I didn't mention, which is critical thinking is all about questioning.
Of course.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You don't take things
but sometimes you have to be careful. You might question too much.
There is nothing called too much. Honestly, for me, there's nothing called too much, but you need to question. Even if you question that internally.
I understand.
With yourself.
I'm gonna have to stop you here. It's the end of the session. Thank you so much, Dr. Tafouti, for being so patient with us. Thank you for the lovely presentation and the great tips. Please stay with us for the next session. Dear audience, please complete the feedback form. Please note participant certificates are issued only to those who complete the feedback form. Please join the next concurrent session, plenary speaker session next. Professor David Crystal. We're really looking forward to that. Please join us and have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for having me, and thanks to everybody who attended, and I hope you can take some of the tips and use them in your teaching, inshallah.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All the
Thank
best.
you, sir.
Thank you.
Have a great
Bye-bye.
day.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Same to you. Bye-bye.